Well, there are more lawsuits against Sheriff Tommy Ford that have been started. And I'm not going to get into the details, but I'll tell you that they have to do with the treatment of the Bay County Sheriff's Office and their relationship to the Children's Advocacy Center and the Hoot Crawford case. So Judge Kelvin C. Wells, the bum, and I'll show you why I call him a bum. I mean, this is a judge that was brought over to do the hit job on Hoot Crawford, the Marcy's Law attorney for the 16-year-old girl when he represented her a couple of years ago. She was a victim. Marcy's Law is an amendment to the Florida Constitution that allows victims to also have legal representation throughout the entire process, especially if you're a criminal victim, if you're a victim of a violent crime or a sexual assault crime, especially if you're, a teenager. You really don't know how to navigate things, especially when the last few episodes with the authorities were not pleasant, to say the least, right? When the sheriff's office was banging on mom's door, yelling about, "I'll take the rest of your kids and put you in jail." Yeah, it's probably time for their own attorney, which they got, and an attorney to represent their daughter who was a victim. Unbelievable. But back to Kelvin C. Wells, the bum, the judge. He's a circuit court judge in Walton County because all of the local judges, all the circuit judges in the 14th Judicial Circuit recused themselves. So they had to bring over Judge Wells. And Judge Wells, to stay awake, scrolled Facebook on his phone and texted extensively. We don't know who he was texting. But it would sure be nice to find out how he made those crazy ass decisions that I'm going to go over tonight in detail. Oh, this is a big one. I haven't done a show in a long time. Jeez, look, I'm not even framed right. I feel I'm a little off, all right? But this is going to be such important stuff for you tonight. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about with the bum, Kelvin C. Wells. He's a circuit court judge. He was appointed in 2004 by Governor Jeb Bush. Okay, Governor. So he's 20 years as a circuit court judge. That's a big. Circuit court judges can sentence you to death. They can take your kids from you. Right, Kelvin? It's a big job. And he's tired. You know, he's a tired guy. And just to stay awake, he's got to scroll Facebook while the witnesses are on the stand. So, it might be nice to get the retirement and have do some favors, maybe. I don't know, maybe. And have the governor appoint you to a kickback job, a county judge. So he moved down. No judges don't move down, except bums. But I don't want to get too much into that. Now, Kelvin C. Wells is so beloved by the local cartel that they even ran a story on him. WMBB did a big PR as though this is news. Do you think it's news that WMBB would cover a familiar face, a familiar judge around here? Tom Lewis says, Huey Lewis in the news, got appointed to the county. He didn't say got a lower job because he's a bum. Didn't say that. But you know what? I went looking for that story because they ran that story a few days ago. Look at this. Kelvin Wells, Tom Lewis. Kelvin Wells got appointed by Governor DeSantis to a lower court. I went looking for it, and guess what I found? WMBB has removed the story about Kelvin C. Judge Wells getting appointed by Governor DeSantis when Governor DeSantis wasn't endorsing Mark Sheldon. Look at that. They removed it. I think Mark Sheldon needed some more endorsements. But I don't want to get into that right now either. Bernie, stop gloating. It's beneath you. No, it's not. I promise. Mother. So, but here's the problem WMBB has. The last time, well, they do this every now. Oh, We don't have this. Why not? What's wrong with the story? Good thing I got it. I've learned my lesson. Yep, I got the story, and I'm going to share. They ran this story as it was those news. This is the judge that scrolls Facebook, takes people's kids, and throws Marcy's Law attorneys, doesn't let them defend themselves, violates attorney-client privilege. I mean, we could go on and on.
Governor Ron DeSantis has appointed a familiar face in legal circles as the judge of the Walton County Court. Governor appointed Kelvin Wells to the position today. Wells has served as a circuit judge for the First Judicial Circuit since Governor Jeb Bush appointed him to that job on the bench back in 2004. Prior to that, he served as a county court judge for Okaloosa County. Judge Wells earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama, his law degree from the University of Mississippi. He fills the vacancy that was created by the retirement of Judge David Green.
It's news where he went to college. But see, by the time they removed the story, the shadow had the story. What kind of a story is that? So stupid. But I do have news for you before I go into, you're going to love this show. I have spent so much time writing a big detailed article about the Hoot Crawford case, complete with excerpts, links, video. You're going to know everything about what they did and how they violated so many rights. I don't even want to use the words I'm thinking about, how they stomped all over Marcy's Law, constitutional protections, harassed the hell out of a teenage girl. Oh my God, it goes on, but I'll get into that. So first, all right, so I showed you the Kelvin C. Wells stuff. He was scheduled to be sentenced last week, by the way. Remember, he was convicted by a 6-person jury. 3 of those jurors lied to get on the jury. And that's been shown to the judge. Hoot's defense attorney has filed a motion to interview the jurors. But the bum Kelvin C. Wells hasn't even replied to the motion. Also, Hoot Crawford is filing an appeal. Hopefully that will be heard. They're usually not. Boy, the attacks and the evil in this town are unbelievable. And they seem to be coming from the same places. His sentencing date has been pushed back more than a month. So the good news for attorney Hoot Crawford, the grandfatherly protector of the teenage girl who was being harassed by the sheriff's office under the guise of protecting kids with the Children's Advocacy Center. Yeah, we're going to learn more about that. We're going to learn more about that because let's just say that when you cross the line, sometimes people don't take it without a lawsuit. All right. And I think there's going to be a lot coming out about that. So his sentencing date has been postponed. That's good news. The bad news is, as Tom Petty would say, waiting is the hardest part. You know what I'm talking about. Waiting is the hardest part. Here's Kelvin C. Wells. Totally disregarded the legality of the DCF affidavit, the petition. I got to tell you that. Well, I'll tell you because it's going to be part of the article that I'm going to share with you. So first, let me thank a sponsor, and then I'm going to tell you some things that you will not believe about this case.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777.
So I've been working, believe it or not, on a big article. It's going to be a 3-part series, actually, on about Hoot Crawford, and there's the title: a Florida attorney convicted for representing teenage victim under Marcy's law. Some of the elements are that he was arrested for interference with child custody and tampering with a victim. The state of Florida took his client and interrogated her, the victim. And Judge Joe Grammer upheld the DCF emergency pickup, the emergency shelter of the victim, because Judge Joe Grammer said that it was neglectful for the parents to hire her a Marcy's Law attorney. I swear to God, Judge Grammer said that. I'm going to get into the details. Now, this is the first of 3 parts. This is the first article in a series of 3. I am going to publish these here. And so if you want these and you're not already subscribed to my Substack, which is a weekly email and a place where you can go and see what I'm writing about, okay? The subscription is free. Here it is. It's at bernie.substack.com. Now, this is a good time to do it. It takes 20 seconds to get a free subscription, and you won't miss any of this. And you can share it. bernie.substack.com, BURNIE. 20 seconds, you put in your email, it's free. Now, if you like this and you think it's worth supporting, you can get a paid subscription. It's the same stuff. All you're doing is supporting my efforts. Okay, so you can get a paid Substack subscription. But if you don't want to miss what I'm going to show you, bernie.substack.com. I'll remind you. But here we go. Buckle up. Grab a notepad and pen. This is not published yet. It'll be published tomorrow. Florida attorney convicted for representing teenage victim under Marcy's Law. There he is. The man who stood up for his client, and the Bay County Sheriff's Office, Tommy Ford, the sheriff, and the man he was going to run against, the top attorney, the top prosecutor, Larry Bassford. They weren't going to tolerate that. Like par for the course. Anybody running against Larry Bassford needs to be arrested. Here are the 7 bullet points to this article. Sheriff's office demanded to question teenage female victim without her attorney. When she and her attorney refused their demand, the state declared emergency custody. The attorney was arrested for interfering with child custody and tampering with an unnamed victim, by the way. Detectives questioned the girl about conversations she had with her attorney. Did you hear that? Sheriff Tommy Ford's detectives questioned the girl about what she and her attorney had been talking about. The county judge, Joe Grammer, he ruled the next day that it was neglectful. It was child neglect for her parents to hire an attorney for her as a victim. To an advocate, a legal advocate, to navigate through this hostile situation. At the Children's Advocacy Center, a safe place that the sheriff's office has commandeered, and they buzz the hallways, scaring the crap out of kids. The DCF investigator, as you know, she made a false claim that Hoot had struck her with his car, and the state attorney, Larry Bassford, recommended the arrest against his political rival, and then he added a charge. Larry Bassford did. Here we go. A Florida Marcy's Law attorney will be sentenced after being convicted on January 30th for interfering with the lawful custody. That's the charge. Interfering with the lawful custody of his own client. a teenage sexual assault victim he was representing at a voluntary forensic interview. Hoot Crawford was also convicted of tampering with a victim for advising his client not to talk with authorities without his presence. Her parents had retained Crawford in 2022 after they grew concerned by the confrontational behavior of detectives from the Bay County Sheriff's Office. Under Marcy's law, a crime victim has the right for an attorney to advocate for them at all times. Florida's Constitution also applies protection to the victim's attorneys so they can vigorously represent their clients. I may just go ahead and edit as we go. So this is Marcy's law, Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 16. So under Marcy's law, why would an attorney get victim protection? Why would he be protected against authorities like a victim would? Well, because without that, he can't vigorously defend his client, as we saw in this case. The bum Kelvin C. Wells said, he ain't got no protection. I never heard of such a thing. Because you don't read. Well, I mean, he reads Facebook. I mean, I got to be fair. So here's what Marcy's law says. As used in this section, a victim is a person who suffers direct or threatened physical, psychological, or financial harm as a result of the commission or attempted commission of a crime or delinquent act, or against whom the crime or delinquent act is committed. The term victim includes the victim's representative, the parent or guardian of a minor, or the next of kin of a homicide victim, except upon showing that the interest of such individual would be an actual or potential conflict of interest with the victim. The term victim does not include the accused, okay? So did you see that? It represents the victim's lawful representative. Hoot Crawford was denied his state constitutional protections by this judge. Here's the background and context from 2022. The 16-year-old girl lived in Bay County with her mom, stepdad, and younger siblings. Her biological father went to prison for sexually abusing her when she was a little girl in Tennessee. On Thursday, April 28, remember, we're in 2022 throughout this, she told her online therapist about an incident during the family vacation to Utah in February. The girl said that her 18-year-old brother had tried to pick a fight and threatened to rape her. She also said that her brother had molested her when they lived in Tennessee more than 7 years ago. After her therapy session, she told her parents what she had just said. Her parents were shocked, but the girl didn't want to discuss the details. She's a teenage girl. She's upset. She was crying, and she left the house with a friend against her parents' directions. Her parents got in their car and went looking for her. Now, her friend's mom worked at the law firm that represents the sheriff's office. And the mom found out about she found out about the situation that afternoon and notified authorities. Patrol Deputy Chelsea Drexler was dispatched, and she questioned the girl for about an hour. When the deputy realized that all of her allegations occurred in other states, she called her supervisor, Corporal Angel Heike. He explained to the deputy that it was not in their jurisdiction. They could gather information, but they weren't legally authorized to do anything else. The girl told Deputy Drexler that her brother was coming to visit the family for a week. She was distraught and was afraid to be alone because of suicidal thoughts. The deputy invoked the Baker Act to prevent the girl from hurting herself and allowed her parents to take her to Emerald Coast Behavioral Hospital. On Monday, so 3 or 4 days later, a doctor released the girl to her parents, and her mom brought her home. As they were driving home, Bay County Sheriff's Office Detective Trey Fondren was already calling her mom. Waiting at the front door was a deputy sheriff. And he told the girl's mom that he needed to call Detective Trey Fondren immediately. Look, you guys are like, it's like you're all sitting in here with me. Here's an excerpt from the deposition of the mom. So I had just picked my daughter up from her Baker Act. She had been released, and I got home. When I got home, there was a Bay County sheriff's officer at my front door. He said, "You need to call this detective." I said, "Okay, as soon as I get my daughter situated." I've got 4 of the children inside, younger children. And the defense attorney who's deposing the mom, Don Pumphrey, says, "Let me pause for a minute. Were you pregnant at the time?" "Yes, I was pregnant." "Okay." She says 7 months. 7 months pregnant. "And were there any risks associated with this pregnancy?" Mom says, "Yes, I have a heart condition and my device was not working. And I had to wear an external defibrillator to make sure that my heart didn't stop." The girl and her mom were alarmed and trying to explain to the younger siblings where she'd been. Her mom, who was struggling with a high-risk pregnancy, told the deputy she would call the detective later on. Within an hour, Detective Fondren arrived, banging on the door, and began questioning the girl's mom. He accused her of child neglect and threatened to arrest her and take all of her children. She said, "I went in, and a few minutes later, I hear banging at the door. And it's Detective Trey." I can't remember his last name. "Trey Fondren?" "Yes." "With the Bay County Sheriff's Office?" "Yes." And he says, "Why aren't you returning my phone calls? I've been trying to call you." And I was like, it's literally within an hour that we've been home. I said, "I'm going to call you. I'm going to make arrangements. I just need a second." And then he started screaming at me, telling me that I was a horrible parent, that he was going to file charges against me, that I was putting my daughter in danger, and that I was a negligent parent. I said, "That's not true. I'm trying to make the appointment. I'm going to fight." I was very calm. I said, "I'm going to record this," after he kept screaming. I said, "I'm going to get out my phone and I'm going to record this so we can understand and make sure what's being said." And at that point, he stormed off, got in his car, and I came back inside. When she began recording on her cell phone, Detective Fondren left and called the Department of Children and Families from his vehicle to report that he had just seen the brother enter the home, which was untrue. On Tuesday, remember, that was Monday when the sheriff's office came banging on the door, threatening to take all the kids. The next day, it was Tuesday, the parents retained Crawford to represent their daughter as a Marcy's Law victim. Crawford contacted the Gulf Coast Children's Advocacy Center and scheduled a voluntary forensic interview for Friday. The stated purpose for the interview was for the girl to feel safe enough to disclose any neglect, abuse, or abandonment she might be experiencing. Authorities also said they needed to provide therapy from the Advocacy Center in order to ensure her safety. When she arrived with Crawford and her parents, they were met by Chief Operating Officer Brent Patrick, a former detective with the sheriff's office. He was with Victoria Hamilton, the case manager for the Advocacy Center's Child Protective Team. Detective Fondren joined them at the safe place. After he yelled at her 4 days earlier, "There's the Cape Fear villain who's been chasing the 16-year-old girl around. He's there." "Oh, yeah, real safe place, Children's Advocacy Center, with cops buzzing the halls, rubbing their hands together." They said that Hamilton, the case manager, needed to interview the girl alone, according to the Advocacy Center's handbook. Now, Crawford had promised the girl he would stay by her side, and she didn't want to be interviewed without him with her. Now, if you were at the trial, you would see Sheriff Tommy Ford's Detective Trey Fondren and his supervisor, Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, say, nah, he didn't say that. He was scaring the girl, and we were just trying to help the girl. We were just trying to help her. But Hoot was scaring her to death. Well, this is a video excerpt of the deposition of Victoria Hamilton, the Advocacy Center's case manager, who was supposed to interview the girl, just interview her. This is what she had to say. Let's see what she had to say. She was the one there.
Okay. And Mr. Crawford indicated that he had promised the child that he would not leave her side while in the building.
I do remember him saying that, yes, when I spoke
Okay.
with him.
And that sounds like a reasonable promise to a child who's nervous about going to a different place, even though it's a place that's to make people feel safe and children feel safe.
Yes,
Okay. And so when you make promises to children, you don't want to break those promises because then you lose trust. You would agree?
I would agree with this.
Okay. And so you may, and you're the CPT examiner. Paisley Sweeney was available, present with her attorney, and there was a CPT room available.
Correct.
Okay. And you were available.
Correct.
And so the only reason the CPT didn't happen is because Mr. Crawford was not going to be allowed to keep his promise.
Yes. I did explain to him how which he already knew how the CPTs worked. I can't force the child to talk to me or go into a room with me. They have to be volunteer with that. And she did not want to enter the room without her attorney. We explained what would be happening both to the family and to Mr. Crawford. And at that time, when they were there, they did not want to go in without the attorney present.
Okay, now I do want to point out that Victoria Hamilton, the case manager, she's not a villain in this story. She told the truth. You heard her say that the girl and she wanted her attorney at her side. The Bay County Sheriff's Office kept saying over and over and over that she was scared of him and they were just trying to help her. Now, you saw the case manager who was standing there with Detective Fondren and the former detective and COO of the Advocacy Center, Brent Patrick. They all said she was scared of her attorney, Hoot Crawford. No, she wanted her grandfatherly protector to be with him. She didn't want to go in the room alone. And he promised that he would be with her, and he kept his promise. At this point, Detective Fondren began questioning the girl about what she had told Deputy Drexler the week before. The voluntary interview suddenly had become a law enforcement interrogation at the Advocacy Center, and the girl felt ambushed. Detective Fondren became frustrated at Crawford for not allowing his client to answer any of his law enforcement questions. Crawford let them know that he did not appreciate them scaring the girl with the bait and switch. The girl had invoked her right to an attorney as a victim under Marcy's law, and Crawford refused to leave her side. Detective Fondren called his supervisor, Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, who rushed in and confronted Crawford in a room with a video-only camera overhead. Crawford began recording on his cell phone as the two men stood over him. At this time, the girl was with her parents in a nearby room down the hall. Lieutenant Mathis accused Crawford of not looking out for the girl's best interest and said he was interfering with an investigation. When Crawford asked if the girl was obligated to answer their questions in any way, Lieutenant Mathis said, in a child molestation investigation, it would be nice if she would answer questions. Increasingly agitated, Lieutenant Mathis asked, do we need to call DCF and shelter that child? Remove y'all from the CAC, her parents, yourself included, from the CAC, the Children's Advocacy Center, of which he's a board member, by the way, as is Brent Patrick, was Sheriff Tommy Ford, as is State Attorney Larry Bassford. They're all board members, but I don't want to get into that at this moment. He says, and then get an order to do an interview with her because we can do all that this afternoon if we need to. And boy, was he right. They got connections. A voluntary interview. That's what they were there for. Here, listen.
You have chosen to sit in here with my investigator and not allow, quote unquote, your client to answer questions.
Is
for
she
you to
obligated to
answer
answer your questions?
In a child molestation interview, it would be nice if she answered questions.
I understand it. Is she obligated? Do you have a court order? Do you have a statute that requires her to say anything?
Is that what we need to do, Hoot?
Are she obligated to answer your questions, sir? I'm asking you. That's what I'm asking you. Is she obligated? You said she could voluntarily talk to you. She has chosen not to.
No, she didn't choose not to. You chose and her parents chose for her not to. Do we need to get DCF to shelter that child? Remove y'all from the CAC, her parents, yourself included, from the CAC, and then get an order to do an interview with her? Because we can do that all this afternoon if we need to.
I can't stop you from doing anything, Jeremy. You chose to do what you chose to do.
No, you.
All right. I want to point something out here. The sheriff's office has no authority to tell DCF to do anything in order to get an emergency custody shelter order like that. Snatch a kid right away from the custody of her parents requires that there is immediate danger to the girl. She's there with her attorney and both of her parents in the other room. She's sitting in the other room with her parents, and they can hear Lieutenant Mathis yelling at their attorney at the safe place where they came to an advocacy center for a voluntary interview. The sheriff's office has commandeered the advocacy center. You saw all that? Mathis has no authority to direct DCF to do anything. He claims he had nothing to do with it. Does it sound like he had nothing to do with it? Here we go. Remember, if you want this is the first of 3 parts of this article. This is how you can get it. It takes 20 seconds to subscribe. It's free. You just go to bernie.substack.com, enter your email, and you'll get the weekly newsletter in your email box. You'll never again miss another show or Facebook post about the stuff that I cover. And this article will be published tomorrow, and you'll be sure to get it. bernie.substack.com. It is free. If you like it a lot, you can always get a paid subscription, a gift for somebody, and support my efforts, but you don't have to. All right. So there is Mathis makes the threat, and let's see if he was able to pull it off. All right. The state declares emergency custody. The conversation ended, as you saw, as Lieutenant Mathis and Detective Fondren opened the door and left the room. The raised voice of Lieutenant Mathis had been overheard by the parents and the girl, who was now crying. Crawford conferred with the girl and her parents, and they all left the building, which they were free to do. And that's not in dispute. They don't, the lady, Miss Hamilton, who I remind you, it was not a villain in this at all. Even Lieutenant Mathis, everybody acknowledged that, no, they were free to go if they wanted to go. They were there for other reasons. But these detectives jumped in and did this. Lieutenant Mathis had already called DCF supervisor Bo Whitfield and pressed the state to take emergency custody while on speakerphone. So Mathis is on speakerphone with the supervisor of DCF in the local area that he's been working with for 20 years. The supervisor directed DCF investigator Christine Revels, who was standing next to them, to track the girl down and take emergency custody. By the time Revels got to the parking lot, the parents were driving away to speak with their own attorney. And Revels told Crawford that she was sheltering the girl into state custody immediately. This was the first time Crawford had ever even seen Revels. Revels said she was transporting the girl to the local DCF office. DCF office. Crawford agreed and said he was staying with her keeping his promise. He and his client got in the back seat of Revel's car. Before Revels even got into the driver's seat, she received a call from a DCF supervisor directing her to keep the girl at the advocacy center so the detectives could do an emergency interrogation. Crawford opened the Revels. She hadn't gotten in the car yet. Hoot's sitting in the car with the girl. And she opens the back car door where they're sitting. And she says, there's been a change in plans. Unbuckling his seatbelt, Crawford asked if she had obtained a court order to take the girl yet. When she said no, they got out of the car. Crawford said, I'm asking you very kindly to get a judge to order it. I'll be at my office. She'll be there with me. Does it sound like she's in danger? The victim. He's not taking a suspect away. And by the way, this is an important point. She is a victim of what her biological father had done to her many years ago when she was a little girl in Tennessee, and he went to prison for that. That's why she's a victim. I got to tell you something. I know that her 2-year older brother, he's 2 years older, he's been vilified in this. She later said that they were just fighting, the teenagers fighting, and that she had made that stuff up. So she's a victim no matter what. But she says that those things that she said when she was very upset and had to be Baker acted were not true. And I want you to remember that, because the sheriff's office pretended, and I'll prove to you that they were lying. They pretended that the brother was some predator. And they say in testimony at trial that that wasn't even true. They just made that up. Don't believe me? I'll show it to you. Here we go. I will show it to you. You know what? But before I do that, this is a good time to thank yet another sponsor who helps me to try to tell you the rest of the story.
Have you received a speeding ticket for which you want no points placed onto your driving record? I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
All right, back to the story. This is the article that will be published tomorrow. All right, so I'm asking, who tells the DCF investigator who was told to track him down in the parking lot and get the girl, just get the girl. It reminds me, by the way, of the greatest villain in cinema history, in my opinion, and the American Film Institute's opinion, from the movie Chinatown. You want to watch one of my 3 favorite movies of all time, and maybe the greatest? Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. In that movie, there's an old man who is the greatest villain of all time. And he has a line in the movie, a famous line where he says, just get the girl, just get the girl. And that's all I hear when I see the Cape Fear villain and the just get the girl from Chinatown. It's like 2 villains mixed in one, right here in Bay County Sheriff's Office. Gee. So Hoot and you're going to see this because I'm going to show you the video. All of this is in this article. Hoot and the girl begin walking toward his car, and the DCF investigator, who's been told to track him down, she's following him, insisting that the girl is now in state custody, and told them not to leave. Crawford repeatedly told rebels that they'd be waiting at his office located within a mile from the Advocacy Center. In an effort to prevent them from leaving, rebels stood behind Crawford's parked car. Crawford backed up a couple of feet, stopped, and then drove forward over the parking curb and headed to his office. Revels told authorities that Crawford had struck her with his vehicle while he was getting away. But that wasn't true, as security video showed otherwise. However, by the way, Sheriff Tommy Ford and State Attorney Larry Bassford and WMBB continued that lie and those charges against Crawford until 3 days before the trial. Then they dropped that charge because they knew it was a goddamn lie. Think about that. They aided and abetted a crime. Watch. So Crawford backed up a couple of feet, stopped, put it in drive, and went forward over the curb and out of the parking lot. As Crawford shifted into drive, she, standing behind the car, shuffled 2 steps forward toward the car, showing no indication of being struck. She walked briskly in and out of the Advocacy Center while carrying a heavy bag. Now, I don't know if this is going to show up here or not, but I'm going to try this. I might be able to show this to you. I can show you visually. There was an analysis of where she stood. Okay, I'm going to try this. No, I'm not. I'm going to let you see it when you subscribe to the newsletter and get this article that'll be published tomorrow. And again, if you don't know, Bernie, how do I subscribe again? It's free. If you want to get this, it's published tomorrow. Bernie.substack.com. Bernie.substack.com. Free, takes 20 seconds. And you'll be able to see this. But I'm going to show you the video right now. Here we go. This is what happened. This is when they were walking to the car and the DCF investigators trying to chase them down. You can't leave. You can't leave. You can't take your client to your law office.
Very kindly to get a judge to order it. Please, I'll be at my office. She'll be there with me. I'll be at my office. She'll be there with me. I'm not going to play privacy. Ma'am, you have to have one of us by the arm. Around. Use physical force, because we're going to walk away from this right now. You haven't shown us any authority whatsoever. You didn't have a seat, please. We'll be at my office. We'll be at my office. That's enough of the threats.
Now watch. Back, forward, walk. Tell me if it looks like this woman has been struck by a vehicle that looks like she's hurt.
We're out of there.
She's got a heavy bag with her.
Like I told you.
Does she look like she's injured? She went to the emergency room 3 days later and then went on a workers' comp for 5 months. And Sheriff Tommy Ford helped her do that. And so did State Attorney Larry Bassford with their false charges against Hoot Crawford that they dropped 3 days. 3 days before trial. Workers' comp fraud. When you see the analysis, they did a digital analysis of where she was standing and how the car went back. She was not struck by the car. But I do hope she heals. I hope she has a full recovery. Just maybe not from her any physical ailments is all. All right. Those are the kind of authorities that are protecting children that the sheriff's office is working with. All right, the next day on Saturday, that was all on Friday. The next day on Saturday, that lady Revels attended the shelter hearing via Zoom to obtain a custody order. So they did the emergency pickup. A judge signed off on it. Yeah, you got to save her. Go ahead. And then the next day, they had to have a hearing. And that's very important, by the way, as you'll see right here. So 2 days later, she went to the emergency room claiming that she was injured. And after that, she received workers' compensation benefits for 5 months. Local news outlets reported that Crawford had kidnapped the girl and hit a DCF investigator as he fled the scene. WMBB emphasized that Crawford had previously run for office. That was their focus, because it was known that he wanted to run for office against the guy who recommended his arrest, top prosecutor, state attorney Larry Bassford. Okay, so WMBB is going to emphasize he's a candidate, but they won't. They emphasized that Crawford had previously run for office, but they didn't mention his intentions to run against Bassford for state attorney.
A local attorney and former candidate for judge is in the Bay County Jail tonight on some pretty serious charges. Bay County Sheriff's deputies arrested Billy Joe Hoot Crawford this afternoon in downtown Panama City. According to investigators, Crawford tried to interject himself into an interview session at the Child Advocacy Center. CAC and the Department of Children and Families wanted to question an underage girl in connection with a child abuse case. When authorities refused to allow Crawford to take part in that interview, they say he put the girl in his vehicle and left the scene. On the way out of the parking lot, he allegedly hit a DCF worker with his vehicle. Deputies managed to stop him near the intersection of 10th Street and Harrison Avenue. They say that he locked his doors and refused to come out for more than an hour. When he managed to stop him near the intersection.
Hold on. I want you to listen to Tom Lewis, what he's saying here. All right. WMBB reports. And who gave him this information? Is it the sheriff's office, the state attorney's office? Who lied to WMBB so WMBB could perpetuate the lie? They just said that Crawford took the girl who was in state custody, hit the DCF investigator on the way out as they fled the scene, and the sheriff's deputies managed to catch up to him finally, and Crawford was holed up in the car. Every word of that, as I'm going to show you, was a lie.
He allegedly hit a DCF worker with his vehicle. Deputies managed to stop him near the intersection of 10th Street and Harrison Avenue. They say that he locked his doors and refused to come out for more than an hour. When he finally did exit, deputies arrested him. The child is in the custody of DCF. Crawford ran for judge in 2020, but lost to incumbent Tim Campbell. Tonight, he's facing kidnapping, a minor, hit and run charges, and reckless driving with property damage charges. He's due in court tomorrow for a bond hearing.
How about that? Yes, it was Mathis. It was Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis and Detective Fondren. How about that? Kidnapping. Now Tom Lewis talking about kidnapping. It was his client, and she was her parents were doing all they could for her. Boy, the sheriff's office were after this girl, man. Why did these guys, the two detectives, Trey Fondren and Jake Roberts, and their boss, Lieutenant Mathis, Jeremy Mathis, why were they after this 16-year-old girl like they were? Arresting the attorney and questioning the victim. When Crawford drove out of the parking lot, Lieutenant Mathis and Detective Fondren gave chase. They pulled him over just a few blocks from his office. Crawford was still recording audio on his cell phone. He rolled his window up and asked Lieutenant Mathis for a supervisor. Instead, they were detained in the vehicle for an hour and a half while waiting for the emergency court order. That's when Lieutenant Mathis called the prosecutor's office and spoke with State Attorney Larry Bassford, who was with two of his assistant state attorneys. The top elected prosecutor recommended Crawford's arrest for interfering with the lawful custody of a child, leaving the scene of a crash with injury and reckless driving. That's what State Attorney Larry Bassford recommended. Hey, he's running against me. We got to lay it all on him. Later, State Attorney Bassford added the charge himself. They added the charge to the state attorney's office of tampering with an unnamed victim. Tampering with a victim. It was known that Crawford had expressed interest in running against him for state attorney. When notified of the signed order, Crawford told his client that it was time to get out of his car. He was arrested by Detective Fondren and she was taken back to the Advocacy Center to be interviewed by Hamilton. The girl denied her own previous allegations, telling Hamilton that she was mentally unstable at the time she made them to Deputy Drexler. Remember, after that, she was Baker acted. She was having a hard time. 16-year-old girls who go through what she went through at a young age. It's very, very, very difficult. It's not out of the ordinary. In fact, she's a damn good girl. She's a great girl. And you'll learn more about that down the road, actually, I think. All right, so meanwhile, Detective Jake Roberts, so while she's in there being interviewed, finally, alone, at the safe place, the Children's Advocacy Center, outside, watching on a live stream, is another detective, Jake Roberts. He's watching a live stream, rubbing his hands together. When Hamilton finished, he went in at the Advocacy Center and began questioning the girl without advising that she had the right to an attorney. The detective's questions went on to include what Crawford had told her and what she told him. Here's his deposition. So the question is, nobody talked to her after her attorney was removed? Jake Roberts says, I didn't talk to her. I mean, when the Children's Advocacy Center talked to her, they talked to her prior to the interview, but I don't know what they said. And the question is, well, who was advising the child of her legal rights under Marcy's law at the time? Jake Roberts, nobody. Nobody. Question, was an attorney offered to her or provided to her? Jake Roberts, detective, sheriff's office. No, and that's not something we've ever done at the Children's Advocacy Center or something I've ever done. Don't advise people of their right to an attorney, little girl, teenage girls who are victims. That night, because remember, they've taken her into state custody now. That night, the state sheltered the girl at the same friend's home whose mom worked at the sheriff's law firm. Keeping her in a safe place. Shelter hearing and review hearing. The next morning on Saturday, County Judge Joe Grammer granted the state's shelter petition without any sworn testimony to support allegations against the parents. Authorities accused her parents of failing to protect her from her brother, not providing therapy services, and not guaranteeing her safety at home. They can take your kids from you, they say and do, if they can't guarantee their safety in the future against some unknown threats. How about that? Though not part of the state's allegations, Judge Grammer said it was unacceptable for the girl's parents to hire an attorney to represent her at the Advocacy Center. That was the grounds. That's why she was in danger and neglected, because Judge Joe Grammer said getting a Marcy's law attorney for her as a victim was unacceptable and proof of neglect. What the? I mean, let's just sit on that for a minute. Think about that while you're making breakfast in the morning. It's unknown if Judge Grammer had spoken with Lieutenant Mathis since the day before, who had mocked the idea that the teenage girl was Crawford's client the day before at the Advocacy Center. So he said, your client. Here's an excerpt from the deposition of Jeremy Mathis. Question, well, what was their specific lack of cooperation? Jeremy Mathis says, not working in what seemed to be in the best interest of their daughter. Question, and what evidence was there that they were doing that? Just hiring a lawyer for her? That was a big one, yeah. hiring a lawyer for their daughter, Marcy's Law, to help navigate this, which is a constitutional right, which most or many state attorneys' offices and sheriff's offices throughout the state actually have advocates for this. Here we have Cape Fear villains chasing them down if they're 16-year-old girls. By the way, Judge Grammer also prohibited the parents from having any contact with her until after the following week's review hearing. Judge Joe Grammer issued this order without required sworn testimony that the girl had been abused by her parents, which was never even alleged. I mean, that's the legal standard, but Judge Grammer just blurted it out. Not only that, they can't see her. He was mad. So as the week went on, remember that was Saturday, on Thursday, Circuit Judge Russell Roberts reviewed and upheld the shelter order. Again, without any sworn testimony as required by law to support the allegations against the parents. Bernie, you keep saying required by law. What are you talking about sworn testimony? Where are you getting that from? Oh, just this, just controlling case law, just the standard, the legal standard that everybody knows, by the way, in this world. And the case, the controlling law on this is AMT versus the state of Florida. AMT, this is a similar type case that was appealed and set case precedent. And AMT are the initials of one of the kids. All right. So here's what the appeal court said. First District Court of Appeals. All right. The Department of Children and Family Services filed a dependency petition against the father, just like they did here against the parents, making allegations of neglect. Okay. And the holdings were, the court found that the shelter order, just like this one by Judge Joe Grammer and Judge Roberts, could not be properly entered in absence of sworn testimony. And when that lower court said, well, the dad can see the kids, but he's got to be supervised. Judge Grammer didn't even do that. Judge Grammer said, none, no contact. There has to be sworn testimony for that of abuse, not merely neglect. So detectives Fondren and Roberts, after the girl was taken into state custody and sheltered at the home of her friend's mom who works for the sheriff's law firm. Well, detectives Fondren and Roberts had a place to go chase her down, didn't they? They continued probing the girl for answers, even while she was in state custody. They questioned her twice more about her previous allegations, as well as her conversations with Crawford. Neither her parents nor her attorney were notified of these interrogations. You hear me? And it wasn't until June 30th that the state returned the girl home to her parents. She was kept under DCF supervision after that until December 16. Now, public records for all this stuff can be found. It's public. All this is public records at the Bay County Clerk of Court website. And you have to type in this case number to find it because they make it hard to find, but I've made it easy to find. All right. Now I'm going to tell you something. When you look through these public records, the girl's name, because she was 16 at the time, she's an adult now, but at the time she was 16. And because of the sensitive nature of all of this, I look so goofy. Because of the sensitive nature of all of this, They try to redact her name, and they do a lousy job. I've done a great job redacting her name or not saying her name until tonight. Came out once, I noticed, in a recording. And I'm going to fix that. And it's going to come out more down the road for a story I'll tell you later. But I care about this family. I care about, if you know me, I care. I care about people that I don't even know who deserve to be able to live their lives free of being harassed by the very people who are supposed to protect them. And so my goal is to do nothing, is to make their life better, not worse. And so I hope that I have not done other than that tonight. This is the first of 3 parts to this story. Here's what part 2 is going to, and again, this is important now. If you want everything you just saw, it's not published yet. It'll be published tomorrow. And you can get it at Substack at bernie.substack.com, right there. BURNI, bernie.substack.com. You enter your email, takes 20 seconds. It's free to get a subscription. Now, if you like the work I'm doing and you want to support the work I'm doing, there is a way to get a paid subscription, and you can do that. And thank you to those of you who do. You don't get any more than the freebie. It's kind of like a tip. And it is most appreciated, but you don't have to. But you do have to do it if you want to make sure to get the article, okay? Here's what the one tomorrow is going to be about. Let's get back to here. Okay. Part 2 of this story will cover the trial itself. The judge who scrolled Facebook on his cell phone and texted extensively during the witness testimony allowed prosecutors to pierce attorney-client privilege to use as evidence in count 1 that alleged Crawford had tampered with an unnamed victim. Oops. Hold on. I'm making a little edit here on the fly. I hope you'll forgive me here. Okay. All right. Part 2 of the of this series that covers the trial will also cover the judge refusing to allow Crawford to question the legality of the state's emergency custody order, custody for count 2, interfering with the lawful custody of a child. The jury was instructed to return a guilty verdict if they believed Crawford had heard the DCF investigators say that she was sheltering the child into state custody before he left the Advocacy Center with his teenage client, a victim under Marcy's law. Lieutenant Mathis, who urged the Department of Children and Families to take emergency custody of the girl, told the jury, hear this, it's the most important point, that he never thought the girl was in danger from the alleged suspect. What? What? This testimony that he never thought the girl was in danger from the alleged suspect contradicts the entire pretext of the case. And it also goes to what I wanted to tell you, what I've told you. As protectors of people and as good citizens who want those who hurt people to be held accountable, do not jump to conclusions about her brother. What she said when she was distraught, that she claimed later, was not true. Because even Lieutenant Mathis said so. He was never scared that the brother was going to hurt the girl. They just wanted to get her services. We just need to get her services from the Children's Advocacy Center that they get funding for. Okay? He said that under oath in the trial. To me, that is the single, one word is the single biggest part of the whole thing. Were you afraid that the brother was going to hurt the girl? Mathis told the jury after about 4 seconds, no. So remember that, please. All right. Finally, in the next article, during an evidentiary hearing, the judge told prosecutors that he'd be happy to report a Richardson violation to the state against Crawford's law license. That's what Kelvin C. Wells said, the judge. This discovery violation only applies to prosecutors and defense attorneys. Crawford was only a defendant in this case, having never represented his own defense. Furthermore, prosecutors had actually received the evidence in question 2 months earlier. How about that? Is that amazing? All right. That is part 1 of this 3-part series. That is shocking. Not just that the judge allowed attorney-client privilege to be pierced on a hearsay exemption, but that a Marcy's Law attorney was arrested and convicted, and that a judge wouldn't let him use his absolute defense if the charge is you interfered with the lawful custody of a child. Then you get to question the legality of the shelter. Everybody knows that but Judge Kelvin C. Wells and whoever was texting him all day. If any of you have the authority to get the text messages that Judge Wells was sending back and forth all trial long, FBI, Homeland Security, Sheriff's Office, whoever, public record requests, I don't know. Who was texting him? What were they talking about? There was a judge in another state, I can't remember the state right now, who had to resign because she was caught doing this very thing. So if you have more muscle than I do, could you please take a look at that and make sure everything's on the up and up? It would be really great. God would smile on you. The people would be happy. Justice would be served. All right. That's my appeal. I'm going to wrap it up. It's been, my voice held up mostly. My voice held up. Thank you again to those of you who support my efforts. Like the Unknown Patriot. Thank you so much to the Unknown Patriot for your support. Like those of you who crowdfund the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. It's like throwing a tip in the tip jar every month, as little as $5 a month. And when a bunch of you do it, boy, does it help keep the Liberty Lounge going. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. Thank you, patrons. And I think that's it. With that, this article comes out tomorrow. Again, if you want them all, bernie.substack.com. Jump on there, subscribe, enter your email. It's free. It takes 20 seconds. Boom. All right. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.